Good morning, dear students. I hope you all are fine and safe at your homes in this time of pandemic and giving your time well to the studies. So, children, since this is your board class, please don't neglect your studies. Give it regular time. Give at least 4 to 5 hours daily for the reading and revision of the chapters which we have done till date, and be prepared for the upcoming sessions as well. So children, today we will study fourth chapter of our supplementary English reader book Vistas, entitled The Enemy. So children, the word enemy itself is considered something negative. Whom do we call an enemy? Someone whom we hate, or we can say someone with whom we are not on good terms, right? Or someone whom we dislike for one reason or the other, right? So the enemy means someone who is your opponent, someone whose views differ from yours for one reason or the other, right? So see, in the story, I would just read the introductory question, and you would come to know about the plot of the story from this line, from this question. See, what is this? It is the time of the World War. An American prisoner of war is washed ashore in a dying state and is found at the doorstep of a Japanese doctor. Should he save him as a doctor or hand him over to the army as a patriot? A big as well as a controversial question. See, the writer has already written it's the time of World War. He has not disclosed whether it's First or Second World War. I hope you all are acquainted with the event, with the information of the event, that how America attacked Japan, two cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki of Japan, and how people were injured, how they got physically impaired, they got handicapped, like the impacts of that particular war lasted for a long time on Japanese people. So the story is actually a kind of a sentimental sentimental narration in which what happened, an American prisoner, it means a person who was a prisoner, right? An American prisoner of war. He was an American prisoner, right? He was washed ashore in a dying state. It means he got badly injured, right? His survival was difficult. And where did he reach? He is found at the doorstep of a Japanese doctor. See, by the ways of God, like it's often said that nobody can predict what would happen in the future, so destiny must have been on his side. That where did he find himself? He found himself on the doorstep of a doctor, but that was a Japanese doctor, right? So see, America and Japan were not on good terms, and you would read in the details of the story that how these two countries they were so much in opposition, and how the people of these two countries have developed the feelings of hatred and scorn for each other, right? So see, the question is raised, should he save him as a doctor or hand him over to the army as a patriot? Since he was a doctor, the Japanese person, since he was a doctor, so what did he decide? What did he do with that prisoner? Why he began to consider him as his enemy, and like how the story concludes. So children, this is a long story. The recording may last up to 2 to 3 hours. You have to be very, very patient while it's reading. So it's not at all a difficult one. In fact, I would like to relate the example of the movie Bajrangi Bhaijaan. You must have seen that. At least 80% students must have seen that movie. So children, a hatred of very common kind is shown, that how a person from India, he got caught into the trap of Pakistanis, and how he was behaved with there in that country, like how his innocence was proved. So exactly things like those are discussed in the story, that how a prisoner, in fact an American prisoner, that how he was found at the doorstep of a Japanese doctor, right? Like how he reached that place and how he was treated in the beginning, how he was treated by the end of the story, right? So did he receive the sympathy and treatment at the hands of the doctor, or the doctor chose to hand him over to the Japanese army, right? So this is the question raised in the introduction. So starting with the reading of the text. Excuse me. So it is like Dr. Sadao. So note down children, the name of Japanese doctor was Dr. Sadao, right? Dr. Sadao Hoki's house was built on a spot of the Japanese coast where as a little boy he had often played. The low, square stone house was set upon rocks well above a narrow beach that was outlined with bent pines. Right? So, pine trees were there. Dr. Sadao's house was built on the spot of a Japanese coast. Right? So, where as a little boy means when he was a boy, he used to play in that atmosphere. Right? That surrounding. So the low square stone house, so the description of the house has been given, like the low square stone house, right? It was made of stone, square in shape. It was set upon the rocks, right? Upon the rocks it was set, and well above a narrow beach. So see, you must have seen the pics or the videos of a beach in the television, right? So it was set above a narrow beach that was outlined. Outline means many of the pine trees were there around that house. It means that must be a very beautiful sight, right? As a boy, Sadao had climbed the pines. It means when he was young, when he was adolescent, Sadao had climbed those pine trees, supporting himself on his bare feet. It means he used to be bare feet at that time, as he had seen men do in the South Seas when they climbed for coconuts. You know, pine trees are also tall, and here it is said that Sadao had noticed people in the South Seas, that how they used to climb such long trees for getting coconuts. So, in the same manner, he used to climb up the pine trees, right? His father had taken him often to the islands of those seas, and never had he failed to say to the little brave boy at his side, "Those islands yonder." Yonder means there, THERE, there. They are the stepping stones to the future of Japan. You know, Sadao's father used to take him, it is written that he often, it means he used to take him to the islands of those seas, right? And as a boy, he never failed to say that those islands there are the stepping stones for the future of Japan. It means his father was hinting at something big. See what? "Where shall we step from them?" Sadao had asked seriously. Right? In a serious tone, when he was a boy, he asked his father that where to start from. So, who knows, his father had answered. It means that is known to nobody. Who can limit our future? It depends on what we make it. So, a big statement given by Sadao's father, that who knows where we'll go? Who knows what is decided by God in our destiny? But yes, it depends upon us what we make it. You know, often the wise people, the modern people, I must say, they consider that destiny is nothing. I too believe that destiny is nothing. Our life becomes what we make it. If we take our decisions wisely, so we get appreciation for that. We get success on the behalf of those decisions, on the basis of those decisions. If we take wrong decisions, if we take foolish decisions, of course we get punishment in one form or the other. So Sadau's father here says that it depends on what we make it, right? So it all depends upon our labor, our hard work, our smart work, our usage of mind at the required place, required time, that how we comprehend a situation, how we plan our things, how we implement our things, how we take the follow up of our goals, right? So fixing of goals is the first step, fixing of goals, then acting upon those plannings, right? Implementing those plannings, I mean, and then taking follow up of those goals, like whether they are being fulfilled or not, right? And then having the success in hand. So this was a hint dropped by Sadau's father, right? See what happens. Read on the next page. Sadao had taken this into his mind, as he did everything his father said. His father, who never joked or played with him, but who spent infinite pains upon him, who was his only son. Right? So here the writer mentions that Sadao had taken this into his mind. It means when often it is said that some of the children bear their parents' talks in their minds. So whatever Sadao's father used to ask him, Sadao always obeyed his father. Right? His father never joked or played with him, but his father had spent infinite, it means unlimited pains upon him, right? Because Sadao was his only son, so that's why he had taken a lot of pains to get his education and development complete in every sense. It means his father sweated his blood in order to make Sadao a good and successful doctor, right? So I hope that's clear up to now. Next line. So Sadao knew that his education was his father's chief concern. For this reason, he had been sent at 22 to America to learn all that could be learned of surgery and medicine. He had come back at 30, and before his father died, he had seen Sadao become famous not only as a surgeon but as a scientist, right? Because he was perfecting a discovery which would render wounds entirely clean. He had not been sent abroad with the troops. Also, he knew there was some slight danger that the old general might need an operation for a condition for which he was now being treated medically, and for this possibility, Sadao was being kept in Japan. Sadao, before becoming a doctor, he got to bear that in his mind, that his education was his father's chief concern. It means the motive of his father's life was to educate Sadao, right? His father put in a lot of efforts in order to educate Sadao, right? For this reason, Sadao was sent to America at the age of 22 years, and he spent 8 years there. 8 years of hard labor he did in America, and there he learned surgery as well as medicine, right? So when he came back to his hometown at the age of 30 years, means after 8 years, so when he came there, his father was about to die. His father died after a short while. But before dying, his father, by the, you may say that good fortune, by the way of good fortune, Sadao's father was able to see his son becoming a successful surgeon as well as a scientist. right? He had become a surgeon because he had learned surgery and medicine. And why a scientist? The writer has given the reason, because he was perfecting a surgery, right? What surgery he was perfecting? Like the wounds would be rendered clean, entirely clean. Otherwise, whatever happens, whenever a surgery is done, some of the scars, some of the wounds always remain there for the entire lifetime. If somebody gets a big wound or a deep wound, the impact, the scars of that particular wound always remain on the body of that human being. But here Sadao was, working on a discovery which would render wounds entirely clean. It means no scars would be there. So he had done a great deed and he was carrying on that work as well. Right? So, what was the other aspect of the story? So Sadao, Dr. Sadao, he had become a doctor now, and Dr. Sadao had been, recruited to take care of an old journal, right? And the old journal's health was not going good those days. That journal might need an immediate operation at any point of time, right? His condition was so poor that he might be in need of an operation, you may say an immediate surgery. But that old journal had his faith only in this doctor, that is Dr. Sadao. Dr. Sadao was, willingly kept near him so that if the necessity arises, so Dr. Sadao should be in a condition to join him, right? So Sadao was kept in Japan so that if old journal might need him at any point of time, Dr. Sadao should be available there, right? Next paragraph. Clouds were rising from the ocean now. So, the present scene, the unexpected warmth of the past few days had at night drawn heavy fog from the cold waves. Sadao watched mists hide outlines of a little island near the shore and then come creeping up the beach below the house. Wreathing around the pines, in a few minutes, fog would be wrapped around the house too. Then he would go into the room where Hannah is the wife of Dr. Sadao, would be waiting for him with the two children. So the scene of present time as described, that clouds were there, right? Clouds were rising from the ocean at that time, and that unexpected warmth was there because it was there from the past few days, and it had drawn at night, right? But it had drawn a heavy fog, and Sadao was also expecting that the surroundings of the house would also be covered with that fog within a few minutes, right? So that's why what he did, he would go to his room to meet his wife Hannah, who was already waiting for him along with their two children, right? Next paragraph. So, but at this moment, the door opened and she looked out. Right? She looked out. A dark blue woolen hori over her kimono. Hori, it's a loose outer garment and it is worn over the kimono, frock type dresses that Japanese people often wear. She was wearing a kimono and, a woolen hori over that. It means the writer wants to probably show that she was looking very pretty in wearing that dark blue woolen gown, right? So it is a kind of loose garment worn over that frock that is called kimono in Japanese, right? She came to him affectionately and put her arm around his as he stood, smiled and said nothing. It means they are having their intimate moment while she is showing her affection towards her husband, right? Her husband, Dr. Sadao, who was standing and smiling but saying nothing to her, right? Now the story goes a bit backward. He means Dr. Sadao had met Hannah in America. Notice the change. Dr. Sadao and Hannah are Americans. They are living in, Japanese. They are living in Japan, right? But what is written here, that Dr. Sadao had met Hannah in America, but he had waited to fall in love with her until he was sure she was Japanese. His father would never have received her unless she had been pure in her race. He wondered often whom he would have married if he had not met Hannah, and by what luck he had found her in the most casual way, by chance literally, at an American professor's house. You know, now the writer describes that how Dr. Sadao happened to meet Hannah, and how he was so much class conscious, how he was so much conscious of the fact that he would fall in love with only that lady who must be a Japanese. It means Dr. Sadao, when he met Hannah for the first time, he wanted to fall in love with her. But he was yet to ensure the fact that Hannah must be a Japanese, or else, if Hannah would have been an American, Dr. Sadao would never have married her. This the writer wants to show, that such a kind of feeling was there in the mind of people. Like, Dr. Sadao was also sure that if his lady love would be an American, so Dr. Sadao's father, his father, would never accept that lady, would never accept a girl from America, right? So they wanted a girl that must be pure in her race, right? So Dr. Sadao often used to think that whom he would have married if he had not met Hannah at the American professor's home, right? So see how the people met. So that is a very short description of their love story. See, he wondered so that at an American professor's house. The professor and his wife had been kind people, anxious to do something for their few foreign students. I hope you have got to know the fact that American professor, like the professor of America, they used to teach foreign students, and it is also written that they were very kind to their foreign students, because they had very few foreign students. They were very kind to them and they wanted to do favors to them, right? Foreign students and the students, though bored, had accepted this kindness. It means students used to get bored often, but they accepted their kindness. Sadao had often told Hannah how nearly he had not gone to Professor Harley's house that night. The rooms were so small, that Professor Harley's house, like, he was reluctant to go there. Why? The rooms were so small, the food was not good, the professor's wife so voluble, too much talkative, the person who keeps on talking and talking, right? But he had gone, and there he had found Hannah, a new student, and had felt he would love her if it were at all possible. At all possible means if Hannah would be an American, so he would definitely propose her. So this is a kind of sharing that the writer is doing, that how Dr. Sadao met Hannah by chance, since he didn't want to go there, but he had no option, right? Professor's wife was so voluble, so talkative, but he had got there because he went there. That's why he was able to found Hannah there, and he fell in love with her, provided he ensures the information that Hannah is not an American. Hannah must be a Japanese, a citizen of Japan, right? So see how people were afraid of making love, or pairing themselves, or getting engaged in a love bond, ensuring the fact that they belong to the same caste, ensuring the fact that they belong to the same country, right? So they were so particular, so conscious of this fact. See the next paragraph. Now he felt her hand on his arm and was aware of the pleasure it gave him, even though they had been married years enough to have the two children. It means it is not described that how many years have passed since their marriage, but yes, so many years have passed that they have two children at this time, right? For they had not married heedlessly in America. Heedlessly means without paying any attention. They had not married without paying any attention. See how they had finished their work at school and had come to Japan. At school here means at their education. School doesn't only mean that is up to 10th or plus 2. School means the place where children become scholars, where they get their education, be it higher studies, lower studies, intermediate, anything. So the people completed their studies and they returned to Japan. And when his father had seen her, the marriage had been arranged in the old Japanese way. Their marriage was done in old Japanese culture manner. How? Although Sadao and Hana had talked everything over beforehand, they were perfectly happy. She laid her cheek against his arm, like as couples often do, so intimately she laid her cheek against the arm of Dr. Sadao, right, making love to him. So in this manner it is shared that how the people fell in love and how they changed their love marriage into an arranged one by like sharing that with their parents and doing mutual understanding, right? So I hope that's also clear. Next paragraph. It was at this moment that both of them saw something black come out of the mists. The fog was there. It was, the atmosphere was not much clear, and they were in a romantic mood. At this moment, at this time, they noticed that something black was coming out of the mists. Right? What was that? It was a man, as shown clearly in the picture. He is shown that water or some liquid is dripping out of his body as well as clothes, and he is probably trying to walk, right? It was a man. He was flung up out of the ocean. Flung, it seemed. Flung means, he came flying from that ocean. It means he was probably taken by the waves to his feet by a breaker, right? He staggered a few steps, his body outlined against the mist, staggered a few steps, ladkhadana, right? So he was not able to walk properly. He was staggering. His body was outlined against the mist. It means they were able to see the outline of his body. His arms above his head. It means he had hidden his head in his arms, right? So then the curled mists hid him again. It means he began to, his body began to be fainted. What's that? Hannah cried. Of course, ladies are the first to react in every situation. What is that? She asked Dr. Sadao. She dropped Sadao's arm. It means, like as they were standing in an intimate pose, she dropped Sadao's arm and they both leaned over. Leaned to bend, jhukna. They both leaned over the railing of the veranda. It means they bend over that railing, that kind of grill that is fixed so that nobody should fall from the height. So she hold that railing, right? And they both leaned over that railing of the veranda. Now they saw him again. It means the man was visible. The man was on his hands and knees crawling. He was on his fours. It means he was not able to stand properly. He was on his hands. His hands were there on the ground and his knees. He was crawling. Crawling means he was not able to walk on his legs. Then they saw him fall on his face and lie there. He had fallen. Of course, he was not well. He was deeply wounded. That's why. See, a fisherman perhaps, Sadao said, washed from his boat. It means Sadao made a guess that a fisherman probably, perhaps means probably, shayad. He is a fisherman and he has been washed from his boat and that's why he has got injured. He ran quickly down the steps and behind him Hannah came, her white sleeves flying. The description of that Japanese dress, that their sleeves are so wide, right? About 14 to 20 inches wide. Their sleeves are so wide. Hannah came behind her husband when Dr. Sadao, rushed to see the man. A mile or two away on either side, there were fishing villages. 1 mile or 2 miles from that distance, fishing villages were there. But here was only the bare and lonely coast, dangerous with rocks. The surf beyond the beach was spiked with rocks. Somehow the man had managed to come through him. He must be badly torn, right? The man must be badly torn. It is written here that somehow he managed to come through those obstacles and he reached the house of Dr. Sadao. He was badly injured. He was wounded. Torn means wounded, right? Next paragraph. They saw when they came toward him that indeed it was so. It means that when they watched him from close, very closely, they found that he is really deeply wounded. The sand on one side of him had already a stain of red soaking through. Red soaking through, of course, due to bleeding. He was bleeding, blood was coming out of his body, and the sand on one side of him had already become red, right? It means he must have lost a lot of blood. So, next paragraph. He is wounded, Sadao exclaimed. That feeling of doctorate. We doctors, always feel sympathy whenever they see somebody injured, whenever they see somebody wounded. Sadao exclaimed, it means he was surprised seeing that he is wounded. He made haste to the man who lay motionless. Haste means, to do something early, hurriedly, jaldi. To the man who lay motionless means very like having no energy at all, motionless, his face in the sand, an old cap stuck to his head soaked with seawater. He was in wet rags of garment. Rags, his clothes, his garments had become tattered, right? Sadao stopped Hana at his side and turned the man's head. They saw the face. A white man, Hana whispered. It means, they are suspecting that he is a white man. Yes, it was a white man. The wet cap fell away and there was his wet yellow hair. Of course, the white people have those yellow golden hair, right? Long, as though for many weeks it had not been cut. So the two people, Hana and Dr. Sadao, noticed that he was a white man since the cap fell from his head, and they found that he was having yellow golden hair and his hair was so long as they feel that he has not got a haircut from many weeks, right? And upon his young and tortured face was a rough yellow beard. He was unconscious and knew nothing that they did for him, right? So he was unconscious, of course, he was not in his conscious, and he knew nothing that they did for him. How could he know? He was not in any condition to know anything, right? He was so badly injured, deeply wounded. Next paragraph. Now Dr. Sadao remembered the wound, and with his expert fingers he began to search for it. The doctor instinct that he considered, obviously he was an expert, he considered himself so, and with his expert fingers he started searching for the wound, like from where he is bleeding. Blood flowed freshly at his touch. It means touching the body, so it produced blood. On the right side of his lower back, Sadao saw that a gun wound had been reopened. It means he had been shot by somebody, right? The flesh was blackened with powder. Sometime, not many days ago, the man had been shot. So, what I said exactly, that is written. The man had been shot and had not been tended. It means no treatment had been given to him. It was a bad chance that the rock had struck the wound. His wound had been struck by the rock, right? So, the question raised is that, will Dr. Sadao be arrested on the charge of harboring an enemy? It means, would Dr. Sadao be accused by the government and the administration of Japan that he had given way to an enemy? Since that was a white man signifies that he was an American, right? So because he was an American, and Japanese, like who were severe enemies, Japanese were of course not supposed to give shelter to American people, because America was doing a lot of harm to Japan and Japanese people at that time. So that's why the question raised is like whether Dr. Sadao is punished by the law, by the Japanese legal system for harboring, giving shelter to an enemy, or Dr. Sadao is not given any punishment for that. See, oh, how he is bleeding, Hannah whispered again in a solemn voice. Solemn means serious voice. Hannah whispered again that see how badly he is bleeding, how badly the blood is coming out of his body. The mist screened them now completely, and at this time of day, no one came by. The fishermen had gone home, and even the chance beachcombers would have considered the day at an end. It means they are discussing that the fishermen must have gone to their homes by now, and even the beachcombers, the people who go to the beach to collect the remains, if they go there so that they may search the leftovers of the things, or they may search the things which are dropped by the people willingly or unwillingly, or if somebody had lost his or her objects by that area of the beach. Beachcombers are those people who go to search for those leftover objects, right? So they too would have considered the day at an end, means they must have gone back to their homes after doing their work. What shall we do with this man? Sadao muttered. Sadao asked, like, what they should do with this American man, right? But his trained hand seemed of their own will to be doing what they could do to, stanch the fearful bleeding. He packed the wound with the sea moss that strewed the beach. He collected that sea. He packed the wound with the sea moss. He collected that sea moss and packed that wound that was there on that American prisoner, because being a doctor, he was not able to resist from healing and covering that wound. The man moaned with pain, he cried with pain, right, in his stupor, but he did not awake, right? He couldn't awake because he was badly injured, but he could feel pain when the wound was covered with sea moss by Dr. Sadao, right? The best thing that we could do would be to put him back in the sea, Sadao said, answering himself. Because Sadao himself asked the question that what we should do of this man. When he got no answer from Hannah, he himself answered that the best way out to get rid of this person is to put him back into the sea from where he has come, right? Now that the bleeding was stopped for the moment, he stood up and dusted the sand from his hands. Yes, undoubtedly that would be best, Hannah said steadily. But she continued to stare down at the motionless man. It means the man stood up since he had gathered a bit of energy, and bleeding had stopped for the moment. It means for the time being it had stopped, and the man was dusting dusting the sand from his hands. He was cleaning his hands, and Hannah was looking surprisingly at that motionless, energyless man, right? If we sheltered a white man in our house, we should be arrested, and if we turned him over as a prisoner, he would certainly die, Sadao said. Now Sadao has explained two situations in front of his wife Hannah, that if they give shelter to this stranger person, if they give shelter to this white person, this American, the Japanese police would arrest them definitely. Why? Because they have given shelter to a foreigner, especially a person from the country which is the enemy of Japan. But Dr. Sadao also added that if they consider him as a prisoner, and if they either put him into the sea back, or if they hand him over to the police, so that person would definitely die, right? So Sadao is now in a dilemma what to do with that person. The kindest thing would be to put him back into the sea, Hannah said, but neither of them moved. So they chose that way out of putting that person back into the sea, but both of them couldn't gather courage to take him near the sea and throw him in the sea, right? They were staring with a curious repulsion from the inert figure. Inert, here it is strange figure. They were Staring. Staring means looking, right? Looking with a harsh look and with a curious repulsion. Repulsiveness, that feeling of hatred, right? They were looking with hatred at that person. What is he? Hannah whispered. There is something about him that looks American, Sadao said. Now Sadao explained that it seems that this man is an American. He took up the battered cap. That battered, tattered, the words mean that the one that is not in good condition. Yes, they are almost gone, was the faint lettering. A sailor, he said. It means they guessed that he must be a sailor from an American warship. He spelled it out US Navy. The man was a prisoner of war. So he has escaped, Hannah cried softly, and that's why he is wounded. In the back, Sadao agreed. So Dr. Sadao checked his back. He was bleeding from that area, and they people finally came to the conclusion that this man was a prisoner of war, and that's why he is wounded. That's why he is injured, right? So they hesitated, both these people, looking at each other. Then Hannah said with resolution, pakka man banakar, come, are we able to put him back into the sea? If I am able, are you? Sadao asked. Sadao asked that if I give you company, would you help me in putting him back to the sea? Hannah said no, but if you can do it alone. Now, both the people are not able to put that man back into the sea. Why? Because they too are human beings and they feel that the man whom they can cure, why should they throw him into the sea? Sadao hesitated. The strange thing is, he said, that if the man were whole, I could turn him over to the police without any difficulty. I care nothing for him. He is my enemy. All Americans are my enemy. And he is only a common fellow. You see how foolish his face is? But since he is wounded, dash, dash, dash. That means, clearly Dr. Sadao explains to his wife Hannah that he would have surely given this man to police if he would not have been wounded. Why to police? Because he is an American and all Americans are his enemies. So that's why he wanted to give him to police. But why he is not giving? Because that man, he is not in such a condition to survive there at the police station, because he would be given a harsh treatment there and he may die anytime, right? So he says here that if he had been fit and healthy, were a whole means complete, it means fit and healthy, so he would have given him to police. But because he is wounded, so that's why he would not give him to the police, right? See what happens next. You also cannot throw him back to the sea? Hannah asked him. That can't we throw him back to the sea? Then there is only one thing to do. We must carry him into the house. But the servants, Sadao inquired. It means they wanted to put him back to the sea so that he can survive by himself. But, they are also afraid of their servants. They are also afraid that their servants might do an inquiry or their servants might complain it with the Japanese police that an American man has been given shelter in the house of Dr. Sadao. Right? So, when Mr. Sadao just inquired that what would they say to the servants? It means servants would ask question about this American white man. So what would they answer? So see, we must simply tell them means tell the servants that we intend means want. We intend to give him to the police, as indeed we must, Sadao. It means Dr. Sadao's wife Hannah here gives answer to Sadao's question that they must tell their servants that they want to give this prisoner to the police, and they should do it indeed, right? Really. So, we must think of the children and your position. It would endanger all of us if we did not give this man over as a prisoner of war. Certainly, Sadao agreed. I would not think of doing anything else. So, an agreement between husband and wife is made, and they finally decided to give this white American man to the Japanese police, right? Because they think that their career would be at the stake and their life would be in danger if they give him shelter at their home. Okay, so next paragraph. Thus agreed, today they lifted the man. He was very light, like a fowl. He was very light. So, like a fowl that had been half starved for a long time until it is only feathers and skeleton. Fowl, that bird, like his body was as light as a fowl. Together they begin to lift him, they begin to pick him, right? Because they wanted to give him to police, and when they picked him they felt that he is almost starving. It means he has been very much hungry for a long time. His body had become very much light weighted, right? So his arms hanging again, a signal of weakness. They carried him up the steps and into the side door of the house, right? This door opened into a passage, and down the passage they carried the man towards an empty bedroom. It had been the bedroom of Sadau's father, and since his death, it had not been used. It means both those people carried that prisoner into Sadau's father's room because he had been dead long ago, and that room was unused since that time, since Sadau's father's death. Right? So, they laid the man on the deeply matted floor. Deeply matted, it would be easily, it could be seen on Google that how Japanese people have matted their floors with beautiful and a variety of clothes, right? So did the Sadaus had done. Everything here had been Japanese to please the old man. It means Sadau's father was a pure Japanese. Sadao was also a pure Japanese, but he had spent a part of his life in America in order to pursue his doctorate degree, right? But Sadau's father was, such a kind of man who used to love his country a lot, and he had everything Japanese in his room. That's what gave him pleasure. It is written to please the old man. It means he became or he used to get happy with Japanese things, with local things. As it has always been in the air these days that buy Indian products, like purchase only those products that are manufactured in India, boycott China, boycott this, that, etc. Right? So his father was that sort of person who wanted to use only the products that are made in Japan. Right? So read next. Who would never in his home sit on a chair or sleep in a foreign bed. It means he was such a Japanese, he would not allow any furniture of foreign land, right? Hana went to the wall cupboards and slid means slide, to carry back a door, and took out a soft quilt. Children, the doors in Japan are not like the doors in India. So in India, there like at few places you would find the doors that can be slided, as we move the slide when we use a PPT, create a PowerPoint presentation, we just touch the screen or scroll it with the help of a mouse or a cursor. We move the cursor in order to get to the next slide. Sliding means moving with hand. The doors just go inside that space into the wall, and the doors are not opened like that we have in India, right? So Hannah took that quilt, right? Quilt, soft quilt, rajai. She hesitated. Why? The quilt was covered with flowered silk and the lining was pure white silk. So that was a pure white silk covered quilt, and silk, such a costly cloth. So that was extremely beautiful. She was hesitating to give it to such a dirty fellow, like he had been starving, he didn't have good clothes, he was filled with mud, right? She didn't want to spoil that quilt. He's so dirty, she murmured in distress. Means she spoke within her lips in a sad mood, in distress, in a sad mood, that he is so dirty, he is not clean. Yes, he had better be washed, Sadao agreed. If you will fetch hot water, I'll wash him. It means Dr. Sadao asked his wife to bring hot water so that the patient, the prisoner, can be washed. I cannot bear for you to touch him, she said. It means Sadao's wife said that I will not allow you to touch him. We shall have tell the servants he is here. I will tell Yumi now. Yumi is their servant. She can leave the children for a few minutes and she can wash him. So Yumi was basically the caretaker of the two children of Dr. Sadao and Hana, right? So she was a maid. That's why her Hana says to her husband Dr. Sadao that she would ask Yumi, their servant, to clean this patient, to wash this patient with hot water, like she may leave the children for a few minutes, right, and she should come and wash this patient so that he should look clean before doing any treatment and all, right. So she just denied Dr. Sadao to touch that patient before washing. Sadao considered a moment. Considered means he thought it for a moment, for a minute. Let it be so, he agreed. You tell Yumi and I will tell the others. It means Sadao agreed to Hana's statement that they will inform their servants, right? They will inform their servants about that prisoner of war, and in brief they would tell them, and Hana agreed to ask Yumi to clean that patient. Next paragraph. But the utter pallor of the man's unconscious face moved him first to stoop and feel his pulse. It was faint, but it was there. It was faint, but it was there means he was almost senseless but alive, right? He put his hand against the man's cold breast. The heart too was yet alive. It means his heart was also beating. Dr. Sadao examined his body like that. What Dr. Sadao said? He will die unless he is operated on, considering the question is whether he will not die anyway. It means, being a doctor, above all being a human being, he wanted to save his life, save the life of that prisoner, and that's why he's saying that he must, be operated on. And the wife of Dr. Sadao would ask the question in a curious manner because she is not able to comprehend it. Hana cried out in fear, "Don't try to save him. What if he should alive? What if he should die?" Sadao replied. He stood gazing down on the motionless man. This man must have extraordinary vitality or he would have been dead by now. Then he was very young, perhaps not yet 25. You mean die from operation? Hana asked. Yes, said Dr. Sadao. The husband and wife had a conversation in which Dr. Sadao warned his wife Hana that this patient must be operated on immediately. So he would tell in the further paragraphs why he needs an operation immediately. And he adds that he may die during the operation as well. It means his life is at such a risk that he is to be operated on very soon, and in between the operation also he can lose his life, right? So he is so critical, and that's why Hana asked him to repeat the question that you mean die from operation, means what is the context of Sadao's statement that he can die while operating? Yes, said Dr. Sadao, right? He had guessed that he was probably below 25 years. It means he was so young, right? That's why he had extraordinary energy in his body that he is surviving by remaining hungry for so many weeks, right? So next paragraph. Hana considered this doubtfully, and when she did not answer, Sadao turned away, right? Hana considered this doubtfully. She considered the statement with a doubt, right? And when she did not answer, Sadao turned away, went away, right? At any rate, something must be done with him, he said, and first he must be washed. He went quickly out of the room and Hana came behind him. She did not wish to be left alone with the white man. It means Hana is afraid, probably afraid, right? She didn't wish to be left alone with the white man. He was the first she had seen since she left America, and now he seemed to have nothing to do with those whom she had known there. Here he was her enemy, a menace, living or dead. It means menace, signifies that something which is to be dreaded from, right? here Hannah is hating the very sight of, right, very sight of this prisoner, and she is not even allowing her husband to touch or wash that prisoner. And she also adds that, like, she did not wish to stay alone in the room with that prisoner, means she was probably afraid inside, because she had not seen any American after she left that place, like after completing her studies, right. Next paragraph. She turned to the nursery and called Yumi. It means she called her servant, but the children heard her voice and she had to go in for a moment and smile at them, right? Because children often miss their mother. So wherever the mothers are working, they are in some service. So the children often miss them. So that's why this lady Yumi, when she was called and the children heard the voice of their mother, and she had to go there for a while and play with the baby boy, now nearly 3 months old. It means the boy was so small, even then his mother was so busy, and they had employed a servant for taking care of that little boy. Over the baby's soft black hair, she motioned with her mouth, Yumi, come with me. It means she called the servant again. I will put the baby to bed, Yumi replied. He is ready. It means the child is about to sleep, maybe at that moment, gives the answer, Yumi. Right? She went with Yumi into the bedroom next to the nursery and stood with the boy in her arms while Yumi spread the sleeping quilts on the floor and laid the baby between them. You know, children, Japanese people do not sleep on beds. They sleep on the soft quilt-like mattresses by keeping them on the floor, right? So as we people keep the mattresses on the bed, they people keep their quilt-like soft mattresses on the floor only, on the ground only. So that's why Yumi, the servant, she arranged for those quilts, soft quilts, so that they can put the baby boy to sleep on that, right? Next. Then Hannah led the way quickly and softly to the kitchen. The two servants were frightened at what their master had just told them. You know, as soon as it was revealed by Dr. Sadao told the servants that a prisoner had come to their doorway and they have to save his life anyway. Being a human, being a doctor, he has to save his life. The old gardener, who was also a house servant, pulled the few hairs on his upper lip. You know, pulling one's hair, that means he groaned over that statement. He was not happy. In fact, he became angry as well as frightened on hearing that a prisoner is there inside the house, and that's too American. Right? The master ought not to heal the wound of his white man. Right? He said bluntly to Hannah. So, what he said in a very sharp tone to Hannah, that the master ought not, it means should not heal the wound. It means Dr. Sadao should not give any treatment to this patient. The white man ought to die. First he was shot, then the sea caught him and wounded him with her rocks. If the master heals what the gun did and what the sea did, they will take revenge on us. You know, superstitious people. The people who often believe that if a cat crosses your way on the road, you will meet a bad fortune. If a glass breaks or if milk is spilled, you will meet something bad that day. Right? So if your footwears are put reverse on the floor, you would have a fight with somebody. Poor mentality. So the old gardener, having superstitious and old thinking, worn out thoughts, said that this man has been wounded by gun. He has been injured by sea, and if Dr. Sadao cured this man, sea would take its revenge. Samudra apna badla lega, right? Sea would take its revenge, and gun would also take its revenge. So I will tell him what you say, Hannah replied courteously. Means Hannah told him in a polite manner that I will inform him whatever you have said. I will inform Dr. Sadao. But she herself was also frightened. It means she was also afraid. Although she was not superstitious as the old man was. As I told you, children, the old man was superstitious, but Hannah was an educated lady. Could it ever be well to help an enemy? Because Hannah said that even, that was like the person was wounded, but is it justified on their part to help that enemy? Nevertheless, she told Yumi, it means in spite of all those things, she asked Yumi to fetch. Fetch means bring. Bring hot water and bring it to the room where the white man was. It means she would order Yumi to clean that white man. So, see what Yumi says. She went ahead and slid back the partitions. Sadao was not there yet. Yumi, following, put down her wooden bucket. Wooden, the buckets are also made of wood there in Japan. Then she went over to the white man. When she saw him, her thick lips folded themselves into stubbornness. Stubbornness means jiddipuna, right? I have never washed a white man, she said, and I will not wash so dirty a one now. The servant Yumi straightforwardly denied the orders of Dr. Sadao's wife, right? She said that she had never dealt with the white man and she would not clean this dirty fellow who is an enemy actually, who belongs to America, who is a white man. I will not wash him. Yumi said straightforwardly, right? See, the servant has that much courage because the servant knows that they people are doing a wrong thing by giving shelter to an enemy, right? Hannah cried at very severely, you will do what your master commands you. Cried here means shouted. Hannah shouted at Yumi. Severely means very badly, right? To like a great extent that Yumi has to do whatever has been ordered to her. It means commanded means commands you. It means whatever your master orders you, you have to do. There was so fierce a look of resistance upon Yumi's round, dull face that Hannah felt unreasonably afraid. Fierce, a look of resistance. It means such a look of resistance, such a look of, opposition was there on the face of Yumi that Hannah began to feel afraid of Yumi, that Yumi may complain it to the police that they are giving shelter to an enemy. After all, if the servant should report something, that was not as it happened. It means Hannah here feels afraid that their servants may lodge a complaint with the police that the prisoner is here in the house. Right? Very well, she said with dignity, respect, right? Dignity. So, you understand, we only want to bring him to his senses so that we can turn him over as a prisoner. So, here Hannah explains to Yumi that why we are giving cure to this patient, why we are treating this patient, because we want to give him to his senses. Like the patient was senseless by that time, behosh, right? So, that's why we want to bring him to his senses. When he will be cured, we will give him to police. So Hannah explained to Yumi. But I will have nothing to do with it, Yumi said. I am poor person, it's not my business. Yumi here again denies to clean that white American man, giving the explanation that that is not her job. She is a servant there and it is not her task. Her task is to take care of their children, Sadao's children. Right? So she has nothing to do with what they would do with the prisoner. Then please, Hannah said gently, return to your work. Right? So politely Hannah said that you must carry on with your work. At once Yumi left the room. But this left Hannah with the white man alone. Dr. Sadao was not there in that room and Hannah was again alone with the white man. She might have been too afraid to stay had not her anger at Yumi's stubbornness now sustained her. Right? She might have been too afraid to stay. It means she was already, afraid to stay there. And, Yumi's stubborn behavior had created more of fears in the mind of Hannah. Right? Stupid Yumi, she muttered fiercely. Right? Stupid means she called her stupid fellow, nonsense fellow. Is this anything but a man and a wounded helpless man? Now Hannah is taking sympathy over that wounded man, that he is a wounded person and he needs help at that time. He doesn't need hatred. Of course he is an enemy, but he needs some help, right? In the conviction of her own superiority, right? Conviction of her own doubt, right? Of her own superiority, she bent impulsively and untied the knotted rugs that kept the white men covered. Knotted means, the tied, Tied. So she untied the knotted rugs that the old man was wearing, like those dirty clothes. She untied those, and when she had his breast bare, she dipped the small clean towel that Yumi had brought into the steaming hot water and washed his face carefully. Who finally cleaned that stranger, that prisoner? Hana. Dr. Sadao was not there in the room. Yumi had left with the feeling of expression of anger. So Hana is taking sympathy on that prisoner. After all, he was a human being. So that's why Hana cleaned his face, his chest with that towel dipped in hot water that Yumi had brought her. So, the man's skin, though rough with exposure, was of a fine texture and must have been very blonde when he was a child. It means he seemed a very good looking young boy, right? So, he must have been having a very, very fair complexion when he was a child, right? So, next page. While she was thinking these thoughts, though not really liking the man better now that he had no longer a child, she kept on washing him until his upper body was quite clean. But she dared not turn him over. Where was Sadao? Now her anger was ebbing. Ebbing means going low, right? Decreasing. And she was anxious again, and she rose. Rose means next form of rise up. Wiping her hands on the wrong towel, right? And then, lest the man be chilled, she put the quilt over him. Sadao, she called softly. After cleaning his body in a proper manner, she too, cleaned her hand with the wrong towel, and she regretted spoiling that towel as well. So she felt that the man may get cold, may be feeling chilly. So she put the quilt over him. Even she regretted that the quilt was made of fine silk. Its cover was made of fine flowery silk, but she had to give him in order to save his life, and called for her husband. Right? So what he says further, read in the next paragraph. He had been about to come in when she called. It means he was already coming in the room when Hannah called his name. His hand had been on the door, and now he opened it. She saw that he had brought his surgeon's emergency bag and that he wore his surgeon's coat. You've decided to operate? She cried. Yes, he said shortly. He turned his back to her and unfolded a sterilized towel upon the floor of the tokonoma alcove and put his instruments upon it. Fetch towels, he said. She went obediently, but now anxious. How anxious now? To the linen shelves and took out the towels. There ought also be old pieces of matting so that blood would not ruin the fine floor covering. She went out to the back veranda where the gardener kept strips of matting with which to protect delicate shrubs on cold nights, and took an armful of them. Now, where was Dr. Sadao for such a long time? For 1 hour or so, when Yumi had a talk and argument, I would say argument with the servants. So, Hannah was there alone cleansing the patient, the prisoner, and where had Dr. Sadao gone? Dr. Sadao had gone to collect his emergency tools because he wanted to operate that prisoner as soon as possible in order to save his life. He had gone to take his kit. Right, so he ordered his wife Hannah to bring some sterilized towels so that the blood may start again while operating, and he may lose a lot of blood once again in this process of becoming fit. So they also brought some pieces. Old clothes are always there in every home, so they brought those old pieces of matting so that their floor was so fine, it was so beautiful. They were afraid that if blood starts spreading on the floor, their floor would be it would turn into red color, it would be almost ruined, right? So next line. But when she went back to the room, she saw this was useless. The blood had already soaked through the packing in the man's wood and had ruined the mat under him. It means she went to take old clothes to clean the blood that was coming from the patient's body, but till the time she was back there with the old clothes, the blood had already spilled there and her floor mat had been spoiled, ruined. It means that was no longer of use anymore, right? Oh, the mat, she cried. See, on the one hand she cleaned him, she was taking sympathy on him. On the other hand, like, she is giving more importance to the floor mat as compared to that patient's life. She is giving more importance to her floor mat. Yes, it is ruined, Sadao replied. As though he did not care. Help me to turn him, he commanded her. Right? He ordered her to help him in his operation because there was no other member to operate him, to help him in operation. She obeyed him without a word, and he began to wash the man's back carefully. She had to obey because that was an order from Dr. Sadao. She didn't ask a question. Without a word means without questioning. Yumi would not wash him, she said. It means the servant Yumi denied washing this prisoner. Did you wash him then? Sadao asked, not stopping for a moment his swift, concise movements. Swift, fast movements, concise, the ones those were done in time precisely. Right? So the Dr. Sadao was doing his work of cleaning the wound of the patient, and while cleaning the wound, he asked his wife that, did you clean him? Right? Yes, Hannah said that she cleaned. He did not seem to hear her. Hear her did not seem means he was so busy in his work that he could not pay any attention to Hannah's yes. But she was used to his absorption. Absorption means, when somebody becomes too much busy in his or her work that they do not hear to anything else. So, but she was used to his absorption when he was at work. It means whenever Dr. Sadao used to do any operation, he, always become so much absorbed, so much deeply, busy in that work that he doesn't pay attention to anything, like whatever has been happening outside. She wondered for a moment if it mattered to him what was the body upon which he worked so long, as it was for the work he did so excellently. Right? So, here she wondered. It means she was surprised for a minute that if it mattered to him, it means if it is a matter of concern for Dr. Sadao, that what was the body. It means, like, she was thinking that whether Dr. Sadao is really bothering that he is going to operate on an American body, right? So, but it is written for which he worked so long, as it was for the work he did so excellently. It means he was a master of this profession and he would do it very well. You will have to give the anesthetic if he needs it, he said. Dr. Sadao asked his wife that anesthesia has to be given. I hope all of you know the meaning of anesthesia. Anesthesia is that medicine which is generally given to the patients when they are about to be operated on. So a patient becomes senseless when anesthesia is given. Right? He loses senses. No pain is felt in the body whenever even a small surgery is to be done. So a little amount of anesthesia is given to the patient so that he should not feel any pain while the surgery. Right? So, she repeated blankly, but never have I. It's easy enough, he said impatiently. It means Hannah said that she has never given anesthesia to anybody. Dr. Sadao said, it's very easy. Hurry up. He was taking up the packing now, and the blood began to flow more quickly because the wound was so deep and the cut had started. So that's why the blood was flowing very quickly, right? Very fastly. He peered into the wound. It means with his instrument, scissors, he peered the wound with the bright surgeon's light fastened on his forehead. So he had, as you can see in the picture, he had tied a light on his forehead so that he can see the wound very clearly while operating with both his hands, because his hands would be busy in operating. So he tied that torch, that spotlight on his forehead. Right? The bullet is still there, he said with cool interest. Doctors Everybody, like every professional, would look at its prey. prey. The doctor also looks at the bullet, right, that was still inside the body. Now I wonder how deep this rock wound is. If it is not too deep, it may be that I can get the bullet. But the bleeding is not superficial. He has lost much blood. Superficial, is not actually an appropriate word to be used here. It means his bleeding was not a show off only. He has actually lost a lot of blood. Right? He tells to Hannah. At this moment, Hannah choked. He looked up and saw her face the color of sulfur. Sulfur, creamish yellow color. Like Hannah's face had turned pale on seeing the condition of the patient. She was shocked, surprised. Right? Don't faint, he said sharply. It means he asked his wife not to get faint at that moment, because it would be unmanageable for him to tackle two patients at a time. He did not put down his exploring instrument. If I stop now, the man will surely die. She clapped her hands to her mouth and leaped up and ran out of the room. Right? Clapped her hands. It means she put her hands on her mouth and she leaped up. She proceeded outside. She proceeded to get outside of the room. Right? Because she was not able to bear that. Outside in the garden, he heard her retching, but he went on with his work. It means he heard that Hannah may be vomiting. She is not feeling well inside, but he continued his work because he really wanted to save the life of this prisoner. It would be better for her to empty her stomach, he thought. He is thinking that if her stomach gets empty, so the poisonous thoughts, the poisonous, matter would come out and she will feel fine. Often it is felt by the people, right? Whenever they are not feeling well, they feel giddy. So if they vomit, they become good. They feel good, right? He had forgotten that, of course, she had never seen an operation, because doctors are used to those, inside parts of human body, that, how to make a cut. And if we see like a deep cut inside the body of a person, obviously we would feel like doing vomiting. So did Hannah, right? But her distress and his inability to go to her at once made him impatient and irritable with this man who lay like dead under his knife. It means, Dr. Sadao was feeling bad for Hannah as well. Why Hannah felt like doing vomiting, why she did vomit, because she had never seen the live operation of any person, right? So she has never seen cutting somebody like carrots, right? So Dr. Sadao was used to these things because he was a surgeon by profession, and he had already been doing the operation surgeries of people like this. So that's why he feels irritation, because he cannot go to Hannah since the operation would be disturbed, right? Next page. This man, he thought, there is no reason under heaven why should he live. Now, he thinks that why I am, a controversial statement, that why I am saving his life. What is the reason under that? Unconsciously, this thought made him ruthless, and he proceeded swiftly, fastly, right? So in his dream, the man moaned, it means cried with pain. But Sadao paid no heed. Heed means attention, except to mutter at him. Means Sadao didn't pay any heed to the cries of the patient. Groan, he muttered. Groan if you like. I am not doing this for my own pleasure. In fact, I do not know why I am doing it. The door opened and there was Hannah again. Where's the anesthetic? She asked in a clear voice. Sadao motioned with his chin. It was as well that you came back, he said. The fellow is beginning to stir. She had the bottle and some cotton in her hand. But how to do it, she asked. Simply dip the cotton and hold it near his nostrils. Sadao replied, without delaying for one moment the intricate detail of his work. When he breathes badly, move it away a little. Right? It means Sadao trains Hannah how to give anesthesia to a patient. When Hannah comes back after doing vomiting and cleansing herself, so she asks, where is the anesthetic lying? So Hannah is also full of sympathy for the patient at this moment because he is in such a painful condition. Dr. Sadao trains Hannah that she should take a bud of cotton and that bottle of anesthesia and dip that cotton in anesthesia and place it near the nostrils, right, the holes of nose of that person, so that he should smell it and he should go into a deep sleep, right? Next paragraph. She crouched close to the sleeping face, approached, right, close to the sleeping face of the young American. It was a piteously thin face, piteously taras aa jaye jispe. Thin face, she thought, and the lips were twisted, right, and almost twist something that is not straight, that is crooked. The man was suffering whether he knew it or not, right? Watching him, she wondered if the stories they heard sometimes of the sufferings of prisoners were true. It means she is taking sympathy on the prisoners, thinking that if all the prisoners suffer these problems, right? Next line. They came like flickers of rumors told by word of mouth and always contradicted. Then she discourages that idea and imagines that like those are orally told by people and they are always having contradictory views. Next line. In the newspapers, the reports were always that wherever the Japanese armies went, the people received them gladly, with cries of joy at their liberation. Right? Japanese armies were being given a warm welcome, and their advent was celebrated. Right? So their coming was celebrated wherever they went because they have liberated, freed, right? But sometimes she remembered such men as General Takima, who at home beat his wife cruelly. Means she is also parallelly thinking of General Takima, who at home used to beat his wife in a cruel manner. Though no one mentioned it now that he had fought like such victorious a battle in Manchuria. It means nobody knows that the great warriors who become hero in the eyes of others, they sometimes beat their own family, they sometimes beat their wives in a cruel manner, right? So example as General Takima. If a man like that could be so cruel to a woman in his power, would he not be cruel to one like this, for instance? It means, like, all in all, she is feeling the pain of that, right? Because she says, if a man that could be so cruel to a woman, because if a man like General Takima can be, cruel to his own wife, he would obviously be cruel towards the prisoners, right? The person who is cruel to his wife, he would obviously be cruel towards the prisoners, right? Enemies. So she hoped anxiously that this young man had not been tortured. It was at this moment that she observed deep red scars on his neck just under the ear. It means she hoped it anxiously, in an anxious manner, in a tense manner, right, that this young man had not, she hoped, it means she is feeling sympathy, she is hoping that might like that General Takima might not have tortured this young man, because she was feeling very bad, very very bad on seeing his condition. So it was at this moment that she observed deep red scars on the neck of that patient just under the ear. It means she understand those scars, she murmured, lifting her eyes to Sadao. But he did not answer. Sadao is so busy in operation, he is not answering anything. At this moment, he felt the tip of his instrument strike against something hard, dangerously near the kidney. Although left him. He felt only the purest pleasure. He probed with his fingers. Probed means finding something curiously. Find. Fingers delicately means softly, familiar with every atom of the human body, because he was familiar with every organ, every element, atom of body, that no part should be hurt while taking out the bullet, right? See what he does. His old American professor of anatomy had seen to that knowledge. It means the old American professor of anatomy was aware that Dr. Sadao is having so much knowledge that how to do operation in a rightful manner and like giving the minimum pain to the patient. Ignorance of the human body is a surgeon's cardinal sin, sirs. A beautiful statement given. Ignorance of human body. It means if somebody is a surgeon, children listen carefully, very carefully. If somebody is a surgeon, that person must have a very sound knowledge of human body. It means that person must have a minute and detailed knowledge of each and every part of human body, right? He had thundered at his classes year after year. To operate without as complete knowledge of the body as if you had made it, anything less than that is murder. Operating somebody without having complete knowledge of body is like murdering that person. Obviously, putting somebody's life into danger means putting or exposing the person to death, right? So what is the statement? Actually, the statement is like to operate without having complete knowledge. It means a surgeon must have that much knowledge of a human body as he himself has created the body. Of what things we have complete knowledge. Of what things we have complete knowledge? The things which we have prepared with our own hands, right? Which we have experienced along with our life. So here the view is that human body's knowledge should be so much that if the surgeon himself has created the body, it means the surgeon must be the most knowledgeable person, right? Next. It is not quite at the kidney, my friend, Sadao murmured. It was his habit to murmur to the patient. It was, my friend means Sadao is addressing the patient as my friend. It was his habit to murmur to the patient when he forgot himself in an operation, my friend. He always called his patients. Dr. Sadao always used to call his patients as, is it hurting, my friend? Are you okay, my friend? Right? And so now he did, forgetting that this was his enemy. It means Sadao at this moment, Dr. Sadao forgot that the American man lying there is his enemy and he is addressing him as his friend. Right? Then quickly, with the cleanest and most precise of incisions, the bullet was out. Right? It means very cleanly, very carefully, very precisely he took out the bullet. The man quivered, but he was still unconsciously. He moved, right? But he was unconscious. Nevertheless, he muttered a few English words. Guts, he muttered, choking. They got my guts, Sadao. Hannah cried sharply. Hush, Sadao said. It means Hannah got excited on hearing a bit of voice from the patient, but Sadao asked Hannah to keep quiet. Right? Hush. The man sank again into silence, so profound means so deep, that Sadao took up his wrist, hating the touch of it. It means, wrist means arm, right? Sadao he took up his arm, but he was, expressing hate while touching his arm, right? Yes, there was still a pulse to faint, so feeble. Feeble means weak, but enough if he wanted the man to live, to give hope. It means Sadao said that he can still give life to this person. But certainly I do not want this man to live, he thought. Again he thinks that because he is my enemy, I don't want this man to live. Why should I? Contradictory thought throughout the chapter. So what happened next? No more anesthetic, he told Hannah. It means he ordered his wife not to give more anesthesia, or else the patient may go to permanent sleep. He turned as swiftly, means fastly, as though he had never paused, and from his medicines he chose a small vial, and from it he filled, while that filling up that injection and like joining that syringe, and from it filled a hypodermic and thrust it into the patient's. Thrust means, injecting, putting injection in a very cruel manner, fast manner. Then putting down the needle, he took the man's wrist again, man's arm, right? The pulse under his fingers fluttered once or twice and then grew stronger. right? He began to feel life coming back to the man. This man will live in spite of all, he said to Hannah, and sighed. Sighed means he took a deep breath and said that this man will survive, he will live, right? The young man woke so weak, his blue eyes so terrified when he perceived where he was, that Hannah felt compelled to apologize. She herself served him, for none of the servants would enter the room. It means when no servant was ready to enter the room, Hannah herself cleaned that patient. She took up that courage to clean him, right? So, next paragraph. When she came in the first time, she saw him summon. Summon means collect. Has small strength to be prepared for some fearful thing. Don't be afraid, she begged him softly. It means the prisoner was feeling strange where he has come, as we see in the movies, that after like somebody becomes unconscious or senseless, like, and all of a sudden if they get back their senses, they are afraid like where they have come. In fact, they are at a safe place, like they have been given treatment, good medical treatment at that place. So Hannah begged means requested him in a soft tone. Don't be afraid means don't feel afraid. How come you speak English? He gasped, means he spoke in a slow voice. Do you know English language? She replied that I was a long time in America. It means she had lived in America. She told that prisoner. Like, see, she has begun exchanging thoughts with that. She saw that he wanted to reply to that, but he could not. And so she knelt and fed him. Knelt means bend, jhukna, and fed him means give him food. Gently from the porcelain spoon, he ate unwillingly, but still he ate. He didn't want to eat. His inside was so struck, he was so badly, means he had been so badly hungry, he was not even, his mind was not even willing to consume something. But she was feeding him, so that's why he ate, because he felt that it would be an insult if he denied the food. Now you will soon be strong, she said, not liking him and yet moved to comfort him. It means Hannah was having a dislike for the person. Still she had sympathy. And she is giving him strength by saying that you will get fine very soon. Right? He did not answer. Right? That man did not give any answer. No reply. When Sadao came in the third day after the operation, he found the young man sitting up, his face bloodless with the effort. Right? He saw him in this condition. Lie down, Sadao said. Do you want to die? It means Sadao was, shocked to see that person is sitting and trying to move around. So that's why he became angry that I have saved you with so much difficulty, and why you are roaming. Do you want to die? He asked him to rest. Do rest. He forced the man down gently and strongly and examined the wound. So, you may kill yourself if you do this sort of thing, he scolded it. Right? So, he asked him that you may kill yourself if you do this kind of thing. Scolded means, dantna. So he scolded the patient that you will take your life, you will lose your life if you will not take rest. What are you going to do with me? The boy muttered, spoke in a confused, low voice that what are you going to do with me? He just looked now barely 17. Are you going to hand me over? Hand me over means the boy is fearful and asking Dr. Sadao that would you give me to the Japanese police? Right? What you are going to do with me? See. For a moment, Sadao did not answer. Means Sadao did not give any answer to the boy. He felt that he just looked 17 years old. Means such a small boy. He finished his examination and then pulled the silk quilt over the man. Right? I do not know myself what I shall do with you, he said. I ought, of course, to give you to the police. You are a prisoner of war, right? No, do not tell me anything. He put up his hand as he saw the young man was about to speak. Do not even tell me your name unless I ask it. It means Dr. Sadao is so repulsive. He is full of hatred for that American man and said that I have just saved your life because I wanted to hand you over to the Japanese police. right? And I could not give you to the police in that bad condition which you were when you came to my house. So that's why I want to give you to police. And but I still don't know what I would do with you. Like, he was in confusion, but he was having taking sympathy for that little boy, right? So see, he also instruct the boy not to tell him his name until he asks it, right? They looked at each other for a moment, and then the young man closed his eyes and turned his face to the wall. It means the young man kept quiet as per the orders of Dr. Sadao. Okay, he whispered, his mouth a bitter line, right? Whispered, said in a slow voice, okay. Outside the door, Hannah was waiting for Dr. Sadao. He saw at once that she was in trouble. It means Dr. Sadao felt that Hannah is in trouble. Hannah is in some problem. See, Sadao, Yummy tells me that the servants feel they cannot stay if we hide this man here anymore, she said. Now a big problem has come to Sadao's. What is the problem? That their servants have made a unity that if this enemy would live in this house, if this enemy would be given shelter in this house, the servants will not do job here. She tells me that they are saying that you and I were so long in America that we have forgotten to think of our own country first. They think we like Americans. Those, I would say, very superstitious, old fashioned and patriotic, like old fashioned patriotic thoughts were there. So when they said that, the servants had made a unity, that both these people had lived in America for such a long time, and that's why they have forgotten to respect their own country, right? Dr. Sadao got angry on such a reaction by the servants. It's not true, he said harshly. Americans are our enemies. But I have been trained not to let a man die, so if I can help it. The servants cannot understand that, she said anxiously. No, he agreed. Doctors often they are supposed to take an oath that if a person's life is in danger, it is the moral duty of a doctor to save him if he can, right? So the doctor here says that, Dr. Sadao here says that it has become his moral duty to save the life of this patient because he is a doctor by profession. But the wife, means Hannah, says that servants cannot understand this sentimental statement. Servants cannot never understand that. And Dr. Sadao and Hannah both agree at the statement that like servants cannot understand his position, right? So next paragraph. Neither seemed able to say more, and somehow the household dragged on. The servants grew more watchful. Their courtesy was as careful as ever. Their respect was as same. But their eyes were cold upon the pair to whom they were hired. Right? The servants were outwardly, they were respecting, they were showing respect, but their eyes were not. Their voice was showing respect, but not their eyes. Right? So, because it was nevertheless the same, it was all different, right? So it was clear what our master ought to do. It's clear what our master ought to do, the old gardener said one morning, right? It was clear to them that their master, like what their master should do and what their master should not do, the old gardener, right? He had worked with flowers all his life and had been a specialist too in moss, right? Those butterfly like creatures. For Sadao's father, he had made one of the finest moss gardens in Japan, sweeping the bright green carpet constantly so that not a leaf or a pine needle marred the velvet of its surface. My old master's son knows very well that what he ought to do, and now said, pinching a bud from a bush as he spoke, what the man was so near death, when the man was so near death, why did he not let him bleed? The gardener is so pitiless, so superstitious that he is remembering that Dr. Sadao's father loved his country so dearly. And see, Dr. Sadao, he is not having any care, he is not having any sense of patriotism for his country, Japan. Instead, he is helping an American. Right. So these thoughts he is remembering, that how he set up a garden, how he set up a collection of moss for Sadao's father, and how beautifully, how carefully, how by sweating his blood he did it, and what the son is doing, right? What the master's son is doing. So master knew a lot how to respect his country, how to give honor to his country. But on the other hand, he considers that Dr. Sadao doesn't know anything at all. He is a rebel, right? So, next paragraph. That young master is so proud of his skill to save life that he saves any life, right? That young master is so proud of his skill. So proud of his skill means so proud of his skill to do surgeries, to do operations, to save the life of other people, that they think that they can save any life, they can cure any type of patient. The cook said contemptuously. Contemptuously means with a feeling of hatred. So she split fowl's neck skillfully, fowls like a bird, neck skillfully, and held the fluttering bird and let its blood flow into the roots of Vistaria's vine. You know why it is spilled? Blood is considered the best of fertilizer. Best fertilizer is considered, right? Blood. And the old gardener would not let her waste a drop of it. So that's why they fully, took it and flew it into the roots of wisteria vine, right? It's the children of whom we must think, Yumi said sadly, right? So, what will be their fate if their father is condemned as a traitor? Yumi, who was a caretaker of the children of Sadaos, is now saying that what these children will think about their parents, that were their parents traitors, Deshdrohi, traitors, right? So, they did not try to hide what they said from the ears of Hannah as she stood arranging the day's flowers in the veranda nearby, and she knew they spoke on purpose that she might hear. That they were right she knew too in most of her being. But there was another part of her which she herself could not understand. It was not sentimental liking of the prisoner. It means she was not emotionally attached to that prisoner in any way. She actually, wanted to save his life so that they can get rid of that. Otherwise, they were not having any alternative, right? She knew that they means those servants were speaking on purpose, right? So she had come to think of him as a prisoner. She had not liked him even yesterday, and he had said in his impulsive way, "Anyway, let me tell you that my name is Tom." She had only bowed her little distant bow. She saw hurt in his eyes, but she did not wish to assuage it. She did not wish to reveal or have a discussion on it. Indeed, he was a great trouble in this house, right? So she was the patient was a big trouble, big problem in that house, because the servants have been taunting the masters. Yumi, along with the old gardener, everybody, they were taunting and making, a lot of, you may say, conspirational talks about the honors, that they are like this, they are traitors, they are rebels, they are not, they do not love their country, they care more about Americans because they have done their study in America, so that's why they are helping American people. So they begin to do malicious talk about these Sadaos. So Hannah was already exhausted with all this, and she knew it very well that the servants are willingly speaking in a high voice, at a high pitch. Sometimes we are talking to each other, but we want other person to hear to it, so that's why we speak that particular thing in a loud manner, right? Commenting upon somebody in a negative manner, right? So the patient was already feeling ashamed, the prisoner was already feeling ashamed, since he was, he has become a big trouble to the members of the house, right? Next paragraph. As for Sadao, every day he examined the wound carefully, right? The last stitches had been pulled out this morning, and young man would in a fortnight, means in 14 days, period of 2 weeks, be nearly as well as ever. Sadao went back to his office and carefully typed a letter to the chief of police. Now the man has become well. His last stitches have also been removed. And what is Sadao planning now? Sadao is now planning to hand him over to the police, Japanese police. What he did? He typed a letter to the chief of police reporting the whole matter, whatever has happened at his home. On the 21st day of February, an escaped prisoner was washed up on the shore in front of my house. As far as he typed, and he opened a secret drawer of his desk and put the unfinished report into it. He did not complete that report in which he wanted to confess that how he gave shelter to an American man in his house and how things proceeded after that, but he left it unfinished and kept that report in the secret drawer of his desk. He didn't submit it to the chief of police, right? Next day, on the 7th day after that, two things happened. See, the morning, servants left together, their belongings tied in large square cotton kerchiefs. When Hannah got up in the morning, nothing was done. They were so much dependent on the servants for their food, upbringing of their children, cleansing of the house, kitchen work, everything. The house was not clean, food was not prepared. She knew what it meant. It means Hannah knew it very well that the servants have become angry and they have left their house permanently, taking their luggage along with them. She was dismayed and even terrified. She was sad and she had become fearful also. But her pride as a mistress would not allow her to show it. She didn't show being the mistress and the missus of a doctor. Instead, she inclined her head gracefully when they appeared before her in the kitchen, and she paid them off and thanked them for all they have done for her. She paid the servants well their salary, whatever was due by that date, and she also paid them a vote of thanks for they have done services for her and her family. She was, servants were crying, but she did not cry. The cook and the gardener had served Sadao since he was a little boy in his father's house, and Yumi cried because of the children. Yumi had been taking care of children for so many years, and she was crying because she had to separate herself from the children. Cook and the gardener were also crying, right? So she was so grieving that after she had gone, she ran back to Hannah. If the baby misses me too much tonight, send for me. Send for me means give me a call, right? So send a message for me. I'm going to my own house and you know where it is. Thank you, Hannah said smilingly. But she told herself that she would not send for Yumi, however the baby cried. She made breakfast and Sadao helped with the children, taking care of children. Dr. Sadao took care of children. Hannah did not bend, did not bow in front of the servant. She did not even cry. She didn't show any emotional sign. In fact, she wanted them to leave the place because they have become so rebellious. And she herself prepared the breakfast. Dr. Sadao, he took care of the children. Neither of them spoke of the servants beyond the fact that they were gone. After Hannah had taken morning food to the prisoner, she came back to Sadao. It means she gave food to the prisoner also. Why is it we cannot see clearly what we ought to do? She asked him. That if they are doing something really wrong, even the servants see more clearly than we do. Why are we different from other Japanese? Sadao did not answer, but a little later he went into the room where the prisoner was and said brusquely, today you may get up on your feet. It means in a cold and stringent manner, he told the patient that he would walk on his feet today. He did not answer, Dr. Sadao did not answer anything to Hannah when Hannah was asking him that, why are they different from other Japanese? Different means, why the people are taking side of American, right? So, I want you to stay up only 5 minutes at a time. Tomorrow you may try it twice as long. It would be well that you get back your strength as quickly as possible. It means that Dr. Sadao, he advised the patient to take only a 5 minute time to stand up, and from next day onwards he can stand for 10 minutes in two shifts, 5 minutes each, right? This will increase his strength. It means, it is often advised to the patients that if they have recovered from a big problem, big health issue, they must not start eating or start doing exercise or workout immediately. Like, they should start everything very slowly, right? Step by step. He saw the flicker of terror on the young face that was still very pale. Dr. Sadao felt that the patient is afraid. Okay, the boy murmured. Evidently means clearly he was determined to say more. I feel I ought to thank you, doctor, for saving my life. For having saved my life. The prisoner humbly thanked Dr. Sadao for saving his life, right? Don't thank me too early, Sadao said coldly. Sadao was somewhat cruel in behavior towards the boy, and he asked him, it's too early to thank me. Why? Because I am going to hand you over to the police. He saw, flicker, but, terror as unmistakable as an animal's. The scars on his neck were crimson for a moment, very clear. Those scars, what were they? Sadao did not ask, right? Sadao did not ask from where he has got so many injuries, so many scars, right? So, in the afternoon, the second thing happened. Hannah, working hard on unaccustomed labor, saw a messenger come to the door in official uniform. Her hands went weak. She could not draw her breath. She became afraid that some official had come. It means the servants have surely lodged a complaint with the police. So the servant must have told already. She ran to Sadao gasping, means speaking in a low voice with, taking breaks in breathing, unable to utter a word, unable to speak anything. But by then the messenger had simply followed her through the garden, and there he stood. She pointed at him helplessly. Sadao looked up from his book. He was in his office, the other partition of which was thrown open to the garden for the western sunshine. What's it? He asked the messenger, and then he rose, seeing the man's uniform. You are to come to the palace, the man said. The old general is in pain, Hannah breathed. Is that all? All means, messenger exclaimed. Isn't it enough? Indeed it is, she replied. I'm so sorry. When Sadao came to say goodbye, she was in the kitchen doing nothing. The children were asleep, and she sat merely resting for a moment, more exhausted from her fright than the work. She was much exhausted, means she was very much tired because she was afraid. Sometimes we are so tired, sometimes we are so afraid of some things that we feel tired. In fact, physically we have not done any work, we have not touched any task of the house. So here, Hannah is so frightened at this moment that she feels that some police officer has come to arrest Dr. Sadao and Hannah because they have given shelter to a prisoner. In fact, who was the person? Who was the messenger? The messenger was a person who had come to inform Dr. Sadao that, old general is in pain and he may need an immediate surgery at this moment. So Hannah thanked God. Means Hannah was expecting that they would be arrested by the police, right? So the messenger, the old general whose reference was given in the very beginning of the chapter. I thought they had come to arrest you, she said. Hannah said that she thought that the officials have come to arrest Dr. Sadao. He gazed down into her anxious eyes. I must get rid of this man for your sake, he said in distress. Somehow I must get rid of him. Sadao goes to see the general. Sadao is now feeling that he must get rid of that prisoner, because Hannah is so afraid that they may be caught by the police any time, and he leaves to meet the general. There, what happens? Of course, The general said weakly, understand fully, that's because I once took a degree in Princeton. So few Japanese have. I care nothing for the man, Excellency, Sadao said. But having operated on him with such success, yes, the general said, it only makes me feel you more indispensable to me. Evidently, you can save anyone. You are so skilled, right? You say you think I can stand one more such attack as I have had today. Not more than one, Sadao said. Then certainly I can allow nothing to happen to you, the general said with an anxiety. His long, pale Japanese face became expressionless, which meant that he was in deep thought. Right? You cannot be arrested, the general said, closing his eyes. Suppose you were condemned to death and the next day I had to have my operation. General is becoming so selfish. Why general is becoming selfish? Because he feels that if Dr. Sadao would be caught by the police, so who would save his life? As I told you in the beginning as well, that he only relied upon Dr. Sadao's skillful talent. He was not he did not believe in the skill of any other doctor. In fact, he wanted Dr. Sadao to be present in Japan in order to save his life only, and he praised indirectly Sadao's skill of operating upon that prisoner and saving his life in such a skillful manner. He praised him, right, saying that if he can save his life, he can also save the life of that old general, right? What Dr. Sadao suggested? There are other surgeons, Excellency. General replied, none I trust. As I told you, General only had trust in Sadao. The best ones have been trained by Germans and would consider the operation successful even if I died. It means they even call the operation successful if they have done their task and even if the person has died. I do not care for their point of view, he sighed. It seems a pity that we cannot better combine the German ruthlessness with American sentimentality. A sharp comment on the ruthless behavior of Germans, and that is compared to the sentimental, emotional, polite behavior of American people. Right? So she says, then you could turn your prisoner over to execution, and yet I could be sure you would not murder me while I was unconscious. Right? The general laughed. He had an unusual sense of humor as a Japanese. Could you not combine these two foreign elements? He asked. Sadao smiled and said, I am not quite sure, but for your sake, I would be willing to try, Excellency. It means, Sadao has to obey each and everything, that is, each and every word said by the old general. Like he is so much under his control that he is submitting to every will of the old general. Right? So, next, the general shook his head. I had rather not to be the test case, he said. He felt suddenly weak and overwhelmed with the cares of his life as an official in times such as these, when repeated victory brought great responsibilities all over South Pacific. It's very unfortunate that this man should have washed up on your doorstep, he said irritably. I feel it so myself, Sadao said. It would be best if he could be quickly killed. The general, after binding all his conversation, he actually wants Dr. Sadao to kill that prisoner. See, he suggests him that it would be best if he could be killed quietly. The general said, not by you, but by someone who does not know him. I have my own private assassins. Now the general is offering help to Dr. Sadao. Suppose I send two of them to your house tonight, or better, any night. You need not know nothing about it. Means general is not even revealing the plan. He just wants to kill that American prisoner because he is American. It is now warm. It means the matter is hot now. What would be more natural than you should leave the outer partition of the white man's room open to the garden while he sleeps? So that is already open, Sadao agreed, and it's open every night. Certainly it would be very natural. Good, the general said, yawning. Means he's feeling sleepy. There are, very capable assassins who take the life of others, who have that much, they have such kind of killed conscience that they can take anybody's life without any guilt, or like without making of any sin on their part. They make no noise and they know the trick of inward bleeding. General tells Dr. Sadao that my assassins know how to kill a person quietly without making any noise, and if you like, I can even have them body removed. Sadao said that perhaps would be the best. Excellency, he agreed, and thinking of Hannah, that Hannah would get rid of like all that depression that she is having because of this prisoner. So Dr. Sadao agrees here that assassin should be, sent to kill this prisoner, right? So Sadao becomes happy at the thought that the prisoner would be killed and his body would also be removed, and his wife Hannah would get rid of all the tensions that she is carrying these days. He left the general's presence then and went home thinking over the plan. In this way, the whole thing would be taken out of his hands. It means he would get rid of his problem. He would tell Hannah nothing, since she would be timid, weak. She is weak at heart at the idea of assassins in the house. Yet, certainly, such persons were essential in an absolute state, means in such a condition, such as Japan was. How else could rulers deal with those who oppose them? It means Sadao is now, taking a very political thought, and, expressing that the presence of assassins is must in such a situation in Japan. Otherwise, how will the rulers do away with the opponents, with the rebels, right? Assassins' presence is necessary. Next paragraph, he refused to allow anything but reason to be the atmosphere of his mind as he went to the room where the American was in bed. But as he opened the door, to his surprise, he found the man out of bed and preparing to go to the garden. "What is this?" he exclaimed. "Who gave you permission to leave your room?" Tom said gaily. Gaily means happily. "I am not used to waiting for permission." He said that I don't take anybody's permission. Gosh, I feel pretty good again. It means, with the grace of God, I am feeling very healthy, very fine. But will the muscles on the side always feel stiff? He asked Dr. Sadao that my muscles on one side, would it always be a stiff feeling, a hard feeling, right? Is it so? Sadao inquired surprisingly, that really your muscles are stiff? He forgot all else. Now I thought I had provided against that, he murmured. He lifted the edge of the man's shirt and gazed at the healing. Lifted means he took up his shirt, and gazed means looked at his healing wound. Healing scar means the scar, the wound which was being filled up, which was covered up. Massage may do it, he said, if exercise does not. It means he is giving the advice of doing massage to that prisoner. It won't bother me much, the young man said, means that's not a big problem for me. His young face was gaunt under the stubbly blonde beard. "Say, doctor, I've got something I want to say you. I hadn't met a Jap like you." Now the prisoner is complimenting the doctor and said that I have not seen any Japanese like you. It means I have not seen any kind person, kind Japanese like you. Well, I wouldn't be alive today, so I know that. Sadao bowed, but he couldn't speak. Bowed means, Japanese people thank others by bowing in front of them. Sadao bowed because the prisoner thanked him wholeheartedly and gave him the compliment that he has not seen such a kind fellow in Japan like him, that he has been the kindest of all. Of course, that was a nice compliment to Dr. Sadao. But what was going on in his mind? That he wanted to kill that person, Tom, because Tom is his enemy, right? "Sure, I know that," Tom went on warmly. His big thin hands gripping a chair were, white at the knuckles. Knuckles corners. It is, shown again and again that how white Americans are. "I guess if all the Japs were like you, there wouldn't have been a war." Now he is, not buttering, expressing, he is opening his heart out to Sadao, Dr. Sadao, that if all the people of Japan would become kind like you, there would be no war between America and Japan at all. In fact, there would be no war in the world. Right? Next paragraph. "Perhaps," Sadao said with difficulty, "and now I think you had better go back to bed." He helped the boy come back into bed and then bowed good night, he said. They bid good night to each other and Dr. Sadao left. Sadao slept badly that night. Sadao was full of guilt. He was also expecting the assassins that would come, murder the prisoner Tom, and take his body away. He was waiting for them. Time and again he woke thinking he heard the rustling of footsteps, the sound of a twig broken or a stone displaced in the garden, a noise such as men might make who carried a burden. It means his mind was very heavy. He was continuously thinking of the prisoner and the assassins. The next morning, he made the excuse to go first into guest room. If the American were gone, then he could simply tell Hannah that so the general had directed. But when he opened the door, he saw at once that there were on the pillow was the shaggy blonde head. He was expecting that the assassins must have taken that. When we are afraid of something, we used to check that again and again. If that has happened, or it's pending. Same. He was expecting the assassins and he was expecting that this person, prisoner Tom, must have been taken by the assassins after killing. He could hear the peaceful breathing of sleep and closed the door. It means door again quietly. He saw that prisoner was still there. He is asleep, he told Hannah. He is almost well to sleep like that. It means Dr. Sadao informs his wife that the patient has got well. Hannah whispered her old refrain, "What shall we do now with him?" Sadao shook his head, means moved his head. "I must decide within a day or two. He promised his wife that we will do away. We will send him back very soon. Please trust me. But certainly he thought the second night must be the night. There rose a wind that night, and he listened to sounds of bending bows, whistling partitions, and Hannah too woke up. Ought we not to go and close the sick man's partition? He said. No, Sadao said, he is able to do it for himself now. But the next morning, the American was still there in his bed. The assassins had not come. Then, the third night, of course, must be the night. The wind changed to quiet rain, and garden was full of sound of dripping, eaves and, running springs. Sadao slept a little better, but he woke up at the sound of crash and leaped into his feet. What's that? Hannah cried. The baby woke at her voice and began to wail, means cry. I must go and see, but he held her and would not let her move. Sadao, she cried. What is the matter with you? Don't go, he muttered, don't go. He is not allowing Hannah to go because he is feeling that the assassins must have come that night, and he was afraid that Hannah would be, frightened at the sight of assassins because they are so, dark in complexion. They are so ferocious in their appearance, right? His terror infected her and she stood breathless, waiting. There was only silence. Together they crept back into the bed, the baby between them. It means, again, they tried to sleep, but they were feeling restless throughout the night. Next paragraph. Yet, when he opened the door of the guest room in the morning, there was the young man. Again, he was very gay. It means he was very happy and had already washed and now was on his feet. It means on that day he has taken bath by himself. He had asked for a razor yesterday and has shaved himself, and today there was a faint color in his cheeks. I am well, he said joyously, means happily. He said that he was fine. Sadao drew his kimono round his weary body, that dress, kimono frock type. He could not, he decided suddenly, go through another night. It means Sadao is fed up and he feels that old general had made a false promise to him. So, what he decides, you would be amazed to listen to that, audience. It was not that he cared for this young man's life. No, simply it was not worth the strain. Sadao agreed that he is so well. He lowered his voice. You are so well that I think I put my boat on the shore tonight. See, children, Sadao is now offering a helping hand to the prisoner with food and extra clothing in it. You might be able to row to that little island for, not far from the coast. It's so near the coast that it has not been worth fortifying, worth winning. Nobody lives on it because in storm it is submerged, right? It's not the season of storm. You could live there until you saw a Korean fishing boat pass by. They pass quite near the island because the water is many fathoms deep there. He is assuring on one hand that that is full of danger for other people, but he may hide himself there because he is a prisoner of war and he has to escape from the police as well. Children, remember, Sadao is not having human sympathy for him now. He is considering him an enemy, he is considering him an American fellow, that's it. But why he is sending him to a safe place? Because he wants to get rid of him. He himself wants to get rid of him, and he also wants that his wife Hannah should be, relieved of the pain which she is going through due to the depression, that has come because of the presence of this prisoner at their home. The young man stared at him, slowly comprehending. Do I have to? He asked. I think so, Sadao said. You understand, it's not hidden that you are here. It means Sadao warned that young man that the fact is known to everybody that he has been hiding in their home, because servants must have, spread that news to everybody. The young man nodded in perfect comprehension. Okay, the young man becomes ready to leave their home, right? Sadao did not see him again until evening. As soon as it was dark, he had dragged the short boat down to the shore and put it, in it he put food and bottled water that he had brought secretly during the day, as well two quilts, two quilts. See how he is helping him. He had bought at a pawn shop. The boat he tied to a post in the water, for the tide was high, right? It means he made full arrangements for his safety. There was no moon and he worked without a flashlight, right? So it means he is, taking a bit of risk as well, right? So without a flashlight, and there was no moon at all, no light at that time, but he offered him everything: food, water, clothes, quilts if he feels cold, everything. Means all kind of possible arrangements he did for the prisoner so that he can leave the place safely. When he came to the house, he entered as though he were just back from his work, and so Hannah knew nothing. Yumi was here today, she said as she served his supper. Though she was so modern, still she did not eat with him. Yumi cried over the baby. She went on with the sigh, she misses him so. Right? So, Yumi, the servant was missing the children actually. Like she was literally crying, right? So when he came back to the house and entered, and Hannah knew nothing. So Yumi had reached there, and she said as she served the last meal of the day, supper means the last meal, light meal, right? That is generally taken at night. So though she was so modern, still she did not eat with with her husband. She eats after that. Even then she was a modern lady. The servants will come back as soon as the foreigner is gone, Sadao said. Dr. Sadao informs Hannah that if we send away the foreigner, this prisoner, the servants will come back to serve them. He went into the guest room that night before he went to bed himself and checked carefully the American's temperature, the state of the wound, and his heart and pulse. The pulse was irregular, but that was perhaps because of excitement. Right? The young man's pale lips were pressed together and his eyes burned. Only the scars on his neck were red. Right? So that's what that writer has explained, that he checked carefully his temperature, that if he has unless he has not got a fever, his state of the wound, that how much he has recovered from that shot of the bullet, and his heartbeat, pulse, everything. The pulse was irregular, but that was perhaps because the prisoner is excited that his life has been saved and he has become healthy. His lips were also pale, right, because they were pressed together. His eyes had burned. He had always remained in a tension from several weeks because he was hungry, starving. The police must be after him, right? I realize you are saving my life again, he told Sadao. Actually he is saying thanks. Not at all, Sadao said. It's only inconvenient to have you any longer. He insulted the prisoner by saying that we feel unsafe to keep you or give you shelter at our home. That's why we are sending you back. Right? So, he had hesitated a good deal about giving the man a flashlight, but had decided to give it to him after all. Initially he was not ready to give a flashlight to him, but now he gives it. It was a small one, his own, which he used at night when he was called. If your food runs out before you catch a boat, he said, signal me two flashes. At the same instant, the sun drops over the horizon. Do not signal in, don't signal in darkness, for it will be seen. He is on the one hand showing the prisoner that he is saving his life. Don't show the flashlight at night because the police might notice you. If you're all right but still there, signal me once. On second hand, he's showing a lot of care, and outwardly he is so rough in behavior that I don't want you to live. I am just going to get rid of my problem. You will find fresh fish easy to catch, but you must eat them raw. A fire would be seen. Okay, the young man breathed. It means he also trained him that how should he eat the fish. He should catch the fish, eat it without cooking, right? See, the prisoner was dressed now in the Japanese clothes which Dr. Sadao had given him. At the last moment, Sadao wrapped a black cloth about his blonde head. He was an American again. Having white means, fair, very fair complexion. So Dr. Sadao gave him a black cloth to wrap around his face so that nobody should notice that white man is there. Now, Sadao said. The young American, without a word, shook Sadao's hand warmly. It means a symbol of saying thanks, showing gratitude, and then walked quite well across the floor and down the step to darkness of the garden. Once, twice, Sadao saw his light flash to find his way, but that would not be suspected. He waited until from the shore there was one more flash. Then he closed the partition. That night he slept. You say the man escaped? The general asked faintly, right? So it's very clear. Dr. Sadao explained everything to the general, and he told him a cooked up false story. Cooked up means false story that the prisoner has escaped overnight. The general said, really? He had been operated upon a week before, emergency operation to which Dr. Sadao had been called in the night. That general had been operated. Obviously, he was very ill, as I told you. He was expecting the operation any time. For 12 hours, Sadao had not been sure the general would live. It means Sadao was doubtful about the life security of general. The gallbladder was much involved. Then the old man had begun to breathe deeply again and to demand food. Sadao had not been able to ask about the assassins so far, as he knew they had never come. The servants had returned. Yumi had cleaned the guest room thoroughly and has burned sulfur in it to get the white man's smell out of it. Such a feeling of hatred is shown, that how Japanese servants hate the very smell of that American. The torturous thing, a very bad statement, I would say, like how scornfully they used to treat that American fellow, innocent fellow, right? Nobody said anything. The gardener was cross. Only the gardener was cross means angry, because he had got behind with his Christmas. But after a week, Sadao felt the general was well enough to be spoken to about the prisoner. Yes, Excellency, he escaped, Sadao said. He coughed significantly that he had not said all he might have said, but was unwilling to disturb the general further. When somebody is asking us questions, we don't want to answer, and we'll act like, yes, I did. I did like that, like this, means we begin to cough, and because we don't want to answer that rubbish fellow. Same. Dr. Sadao didn't want to give answer to that rubbish questions of general who made a false promise of helping Dr. Sadao and did not help him at all. The old man opened his eyes suddenly. The prisoner, he said with some energy, did not I promise that I would kill him for you? You did, Excellency. Dr. Sadao said that, yes, you did me the promise that you would kill that prisoner. But, well, the old man said in a tone of amazement. Amazement means surprised tone. So I did. But you see, I was suffering a good deal. It means he gives explanation to Dr. Sadao that I have not been well. I was suffering. The truth is, I thought of nothing but myself. In short, I forgot my promise to you. I wondered, Your Excellency, Sadao muttered. It was certainly very careless of me, the general said, but you understand, it's not lack of patriotism or dereliction of duty, negligence of duty. So general here says that it's certainly very careless of his own, means general is taking blame on himself and saying that, but the doctor can understand that it was, general is not lacking in patriotism. He loves his country, Japan, but he has also not ignored his duty. He looked anxiously at the doctor. If the matter should come out, you would understand, and wouldn't you? Certainly, Your Excellency, Sadao said. He suddenly comprehended. Comprehended means understood that journal was in the palm of his hand, and as a consequence, he himself was perfectly safe. I can swear to your loyalty, Excellency, he said to the old general, and to your zeal against the enemy. You are a good man, General murmured and closed his eyes. You will be rewarded. General is showing, that artificial happiness over the victory of Dr. Sadao. Right? But Sadao, searching the spot of black in the twilighted sea that night, Sadao was still expecting that the prisoner would be roaming here and there in the sea. He had his award. There was no prick of light in the dusk. Right? So, dusk means evening time, right? There was no prick of light, means he did not see any twilight, any kind of spotlight, initiated by the prisoner. No one was on the island. His prisoner was gone, safe, doubtless, for he had warned him to wait only for a Korean fishing boat. So that must have come. See next paragraph. He stood for a moment on the veranda, gazing out to the sea from whence the young man had come that other night. And, into his mind, although without reason, there came other white faces he had known. The professor at whose house he had met Hannah, a dull man, and his wife had been a silly talkative woman. Now they are remembering the American professor whose wife was a silly talkative woman in spite of her wish to be kind. He remembered his old teacher of anatomy who had been so insistent on, mercy with the knife, and then he remembered the face of his fat and slatternly landlady, right? He had great difficulty in finding a place to live in America. Dr. Sadao faced a lot of difficulty in finding shelter to live in America because he was a Japanese. That kind of controversy between the countries. The Americans were full of prejudice, and it had been bitter to live in it, knowing himself their superior. Americans were full of prejudice. We all know that America is the superpower, world power, and at that time also Americans were powerful, and they were full of prejudice. It had been bitter to live in it. A Japanese person would find it very difficult to survive in America, right? Because Americans considered themselves superior. How he had despised means, hated, despised the ignorant and dirty old woman who had at last consented to house him in her miserable home. That only that old, that poor and dirty woman gave him shelter in her home. So Dr. Sadao used to hate her, but she was the one who, helped Dr. Sadao. He had at once tried to be grateful to her because she had in his last year nursed him through influenza. That old woman, Dr. Sadao also wanted to thank that old woman, his landlady, because she has nursed him. Means she had taken care of Dr. Sadao when he was suffering from influenza in his last year. But it was very difficult to thank him. Why? For she was no less repulsive to him in her kindness, because he actually hated her. Now he remembered the youthful, haggard face of his prisoner, white and repulsive. See, he is comparing those American faces, the face of his prisoner who has just escaped from the place with his help, and the face of that landlady who used to take care of him. Strange, he thought, I wonder why I could not kill him. See, the nonsense doctor, that he is still feeling that why he could not kill that prisoner. Means he had that capacity of killing that prisoner, like he could have killed him by several ways, right? But his conscience didn't allow, because he was not at all his enemy. Countries considered each other their enemies, Japan and America. So they consider each other their enemy. But Dr. Sadao had no enmity with this prisoner named Tom, hardly 22 years old boy. Right? So neither did the boy have any kind of repulsive attitude towards Dr. Sadao and Hana. He always thanked him for his services, for his selfless services. So that ended in the boy's safety, right? So that was all about the long story, I would say. So I hope you have understood it, and please leave your questions in the comment box if you feel so. And see, do the back exercise questions tomorrow. The answer key would be shared with all of you, right? So till the time, stay tuned. Happy learning. Thank you.